As the sun dipped below the horizon on a seemingly ordinary summer's eve, the town of Belair unwittingly became the epicenter of a nightmare that would unravel its sense of security. The gentle rustling of leaves along the Ma and Par Heritage Trail, once a symphony of peace, now whispered of untold terror. Rachel Morin, a vibrant spirit whose laughter had once mingled with the wind, set out on her routine run, unaware that the shadows she passed would soon bear witness to unspeakable horror. Her life, a tapestry of love and resilience, was violently severed, a brutal crescendo in a symphony orchestrated by a ghost who lingered unseen. Amidst the tranquil chaos of nature, a sinister force lurked, waiting to strike, leaving behind a trail of blood that spanned continents. As the community grappled with the shockwaves of her disappearance, a relentless pursuit for justice began, igniting a nationwide manhunt that would stretch the limits of technology and human resolve. What thrived in the underbrush of secrecy was now thrust into the harsh light of day, unraveling a tapestry of violence that defied borders and time. The sun hung low in the August sky, casting golden hues across the Ma and Par Heritage Trail. It was a serene evening, the kind where the world felt untouched by anything but the gentle whispers of nature. Rachel Morin, a woman of vibrant spirit and unwavering resilience, found solace in this peaceful path. Her footsteps fell into an easy rhythm, a quiet symphony of her own making, as she moved through the canopy of trees. The trail was familiar, a place where her breaths came easy and her mind could wander freely. As Rachel embarked on her routine run, she carried with her the weight of a life lived with intention and love. Her world was a tapestry woven with the laughter of her 5 children, the demands of her small business, and the bonds of a large, close-knit family. Her presence was magnetic, drawing in friends and family with her warmth and humor. But that evening, as she set out on the trail she knew by heart, an unseen darkness lay in wait, poised to shatter the peace she cherished. The sun dipped lower, brushing the tops of the trees with a golden light. As Rachel ran, the world around her seemed to vibrate with life. The rustling leaves whispered secrets, birds sang their twilight songs, and the distant hum of cicadas filled the air. She was alone, but not lonely, finding comfort in the solitude and the familiar caress of the summer breeze on her skin. Yet as time slipped away, the trail's tranquility harbored a sinister presence. Hours passed, and the golden hue of the evening deepened into the inky blues of night. Richard Tobin, Rachel's boyfriend, felt a growing unease with each tick of the clock. By 11 o'clock, concern tightened its grip on him. Rachel, who always kept in touch, had vanished into the night without a word. It was unlike her, and Richard knew it. He paced the confines of their shared living space, the walls closing in with each unanswered call and unread message. The gentle hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a wall clock were the only sounds in a room that suddenly felt too silent. Rachel's absence was a void that threatened to swallow him whole. At 11:23 p.m., unable to quell the mounting dread, he picked up the phone to report her missing. His voice trembled as he spoke, each word a plea for urgency. Outside, the world remained cloaked in the deepening silence of night. Richard, driven by a restless desperation, ventured into the darkness. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that hangs heavy, pressing down with the weight of the unknown. He drove through familiar neighborhoods, hoping to see Rachel's silhouette illuminated by the occasional street lamp or hear her laughter carried on the night breeze. But hope dwindled with each empty stretch of road. When Richard finally found Rachel's car parked near the entrance to the trail, a chill settled over him like the cold breath of the sea. The vehicle stood alone, an ominous sentinel in the dim light. It was a place where she should have been, yet wasn't. The sight was enough to propel the authorities into action, their investigation gaining momentum with the first light of dawn. As the sun rose, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, a search party assembled, a tapestry of volunteers, friends, and family, their faces etched with determination and fear. The trail, once a haven of peace and solitude, became the stage for a desperate hunt for signs of Rachel's presence. The underbrush rustled with the movement of searching feet, while whispers of hope mingled with the rustle of leaves. When the news of Rachel's fate finally emerged, it was as though the world held its breath. The discovery was a blow that reverberated through the community, stealing the air from their lungs and leaving an ache that refused to yield. Her life, so full of promise and love, had been brutally extinguished in a place that had once been her sanctuary. The trail itself seemed to mourn, the trees standing as silent sentinels to the tragedy that had unfolded beneath their boughs. And as the investigation continued, seeking to unearth the truth hidden in the shadows, the community held fast to the memory of Rachel Morin, a woman whose laughter had once danced with the wind, whose legacy of love and resilience would not be forgotten. The pursuit of justice became a beacon of hope, a promise that her light would not fade into the darkness without a fight. The sound of the gavel reverberated through the hallowed courtroom, a stark reminder that the final act of this grim saga was now underway. It was April 2025, and the trial of Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez, an event that had gripped the nation, was reaching its pivotal moment. The courtroom was a place of contrasts. The cold, impersonal architecture of justice juxtaposed with the raw, human emotions that played out within its walls. For the family and friends of Rachel Morin, the murdered mother of 5, it was a sanctuary of hope amid a storm of sorrow, a place where the light of truth might finally pierce the darkness that had engulfed their lives. Rachel's loved ones gathered in a solemn, united front, their presence a testament to the enduring impact of her life and the indomitable spirit she had instilled in them. Her mother, Patty, sat with quiet dignity, her face a mosaic of grief and resolve. Next to her, her siblings offered silent support, their hands occasionally reaching out to affirm their solidarity. Rachel's children, though too young to fully comprehend the proceedings, were there too, their wide eyes reflecting a world that had been irrevocably altered. In stark contrast, Victor sat at the defense table, his demeanor impassive, his eyes inscrutable. He was a man who had eluded justice for far too long, his violent past a specter that loomed over the trial like a shadow that refused to dissipate. His silence was a conundrum, a refusal to engage with the reality of his actions that spoke volumes more than any words he might have uttered. His attorneys, caught in the difficult position of defending the indefensible, attempted to sow seeds of doubt with a lone expert witness, but their efforts were like whispers against a hurricane of damning evidence. The prosecution's narrative was as compelling as it was heartbreaking, a meticulous reconstruction of the events that led to Rachel's untimely demise. They painted a vivid portrait of a life cut short, a tapestry of dreams and aspirations torn asunder by an act of unspeakable cruelty. As the prosecutor spoke, the jury was led through a landscape littered with brutal crime scene photographs, forensic analyses, and the chilling chronological account of the last moments of Rachel's life. Each piece of evidence was another stitch in the fabric of guilt that was tightening around Victor, the threads unbreakable and undeniable. Throughout the proceedings, the courtroom was a cauldron of emotion, the air thick with a sense of collective mourning that transcended individual grief. The seats were filled with members of the community who had come to bear witness, their hearts heavy with the shared burden of loss and the yearning for closure. The trial was not merely a pursuit of justice for Rachel, but a cathartic release for a town haunted by the echoes of its own fragility. As the trial reached its crescendo, the prosecution called upon Rachel's family to speak of her life, not merely her death. Their words were a balm and a rallying cry, echoing through the courtroom with a resonance that was both poignant and powerful. They spoke of a woman who lit up the world around her, who faced adversity with grace and humor, and whose absence was a void that could never be filled. Those who knew her shared memories of laughter and love, painting a picture of a life that radiated warmth and compassion, qualities that could not be extinguished by violence. Finally, the jury retreated to deliberate, taking with them the responsibility of delivering a verdict that would reverberate far beyond the confines of the courtroom. It was a moment of collective breath-holding, where time seemed to stretch infinitely, balanced on the knife edge of anticipation. When they returned, their verdict was swift, a confirmation of what the evidence and the hearts of those affected had known all along. Victor Hernandez was guilty, condemned not only by the law, but by the weight of a community's sorrow and the steadfast pursuit of truth. As the gavel fell once more, marking the end of the trial, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. It was a release, a collective exhale, as if the very walls of the courtroom sighed with relief. Justice, though bittersweet and insufficient to restore what had been lost, had been served. And in that moment, Rachel's spirit, her unwavering belief in the goodness of people, seemed to fill the room, a gentle reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and memory endure. The dimly lit courtroom held its breath, a suffocating anticipation hanging in the air like a thick fog. The trial of Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez had reached its crescendo, and the weight of justice was poised to fall with the finality of a well-aimed hammer. The jurors, their faces etched with the exhaustion of moral deliberation, shuffled back into the room, their expressions betraying nothing. The eyes of the spectators followed them, an unbroken wave of silent inquiry flooding the space. The judge, a figure of solemn authority cloaked in black robes, signaled for the proceedings to resume. The air was electric, charged with the collective hopes and fears of all present. Rachel Morin's family, seated in the front row, clutched each other's hands with desperate strength, their knuckles white with the raw grip of anxiety. Behind them, the pews were filled to capacity, a sea of faces reflecting the gravity of the moment, each person a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Victor sat at the defense table, his demeanor inscrutable, a mask of calm defiance carved into his features. Throughout the trial, he had maintained a stoic silence, his eyes averted from the accusing gazes, as if by disconnecting from the proceedings, he could distance himself from the damning evidence laid bare before him. But now, as the decision loomed, even his impenetrable facade showed cracks, a subtle twitch at the corner of his mouth betraying the storm roiling beneath. The foreman of the jury, an elderly man with a kind face etched by decades of life's trials, stood as the judge asked for their verdict. His voice, though steady, trembled with the significance of the words he was about to utter. The room leaned in, collective breath held in suspended animation. On the charge of murder in the first degree, he began, pausing to clear his throat, his voice steadying as he continued, we find the defendant, Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez, guilty. A gasp rippled through the courtroom, a shockwave of emotion that broke the oppressive silence. Rachel's mother clasped her hands to her mouth, tears spilling over her cheeks in unchecked streams of grief and relief. Her brother, a towering figure of strength beside her, wrapped his arm around her shoulders, both anchor and solace in this moment of unbearable release. The judge nodded, accepting the verdict with a grave nod of his head. He turned his gaze upon Victor, who sat unmoving, his eyes finally lifting to meet the judge's stare. The judge's words were measured, yet firm, each syllable a nail securing the coffin of Victor's fate. Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez, the judge intoned, his voice resonating with the authority vested in him by the law, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers. The court hereby sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Another wave of emotion surged through the room. This time a complex blend of justice served and the bitter acknowledgement of loss that could never be undone. For Rachel's family, the sentence was a balm, a salve for the raw wound left by her absence, though the scar would remain for all time. Outside the courthouse, the sky had darkened, the ominous clouds mirroring the tumultuous emotions within. The gathered crowd, who had waited with bated breath for news, began to disperse, conversations a murmur of shared relief and contemplation. Yet, as they left, there was a pervasive sense of closure, the knowledge that a predator had been caged, his reign of terror curtailed by the unyielding march of justice. In the weeks that followed, the ripples of the trial extended beyond the confines of the courtroom. The community, galvanized by Rachel's tragic end, rallied around her memory, advocating for changes that would ensure no other family need suffer such a loss. New safety measures were implemented, technologies embraced, and policies scrutinized, all in the hope of preventing another tragedy. And so, while Rachel's absence left an indelible mark on those who loved her, her legacy became one of change, her spirit a guiding light in the pursuit of a safer, more vigilant society. As the sun set over the small town, painting the sky in hues of hope and remembrance, it was clear that while darkness had touched their lives, the dawn always brought with it the promise of new beginnings. As the dusk settled over the small town, a transformation seemed to envelop the very air, as though the shadows themselves were whispering secrets long buried beneath the surface of everyday life. The hue of the sky deepened into a tapestry of indigo and violet, casting an ethereal glow over the winding paths of the Ma and Par Heritage Trail. The forest, with its towering trees and whispering leaves, took on an otherworldly presence, as if aware of the stories it held within its ancient roots. It was here, amidst the tangled embrace of nature, that Rachel Morin's spirit was said to linger. The townsfolk, though pragmatic by nature, couldn't shake the feeling that the trail was now hallowed ground, consecrated by grief and the indomitable will of a community demanding justice. There was a sense that the very earth had absorbed Rachel's essence, her laughter echoing softly through the rustling branches and her warmth now part of the very breath of the forest. For those who dared to walk the trail at twilight, an overwhelming sensation often washed over them, a chill that danced along the spine, as if unseen eyes followed their every step. Some claimed they could feel her presence in the gentle rustle of leaves, or glimpsed her form in the flickering shadows that played along the undergrowth. Others spoke of dreams where Rachel appeared, her gaze steady and serene, imparting a message of hope and vigilance. Yet, despite the spectral tales, the trail also inspired a deep-seated resolve, a reminder that Rachel's life was a beacon guiding others to a safer path. In the wake of tragedy, the small town had become a crucible for change, igniting a fire that burned brightly in the hearts of its inhabitants. There was a newfound vigilance, a heightened awareness that tinged everyday activities with a sense of protective camaraderie. The candles lit in Rachel's honor flickered not only in the night, but in the minds of those who took to the trails, each step a silent vow to never let her memory fade. Beyond the tangible world, the story of Rachel Morin resonated on a plane where time and space seemed to intertwine, where the boundaries between past and present blurred like the fog that rolled in from the distant hills. It was as if the universe itself had become a custodian of her story, ensuring that the lessons learned in sorrow would transcend time and continue to influence the lives of those she had never met. In this place where reality met reverie, where the mundane and the mystical coexisted, people found themselves pondering the nature of justice and the thin line that separated the predator from the prey. They contemplated the faces of evil, recognizing that monsters often wore human skins, blending so perfectly into the fabric of society that their malevolence went unnoticed until it was too late. The specter of Rachel's killer loomed large, a reminder of the darkness that could lurk behind benign facades. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was empowerment. The community had learned to wield knowledge and technology as weapons against the darkness, embracing the tools that could foresee the unseen and capture the uncaptured. Artificial intelligence and surveillance systems became allies in the fight for safety, eyes that never closed, guardians that never wavered in their watch. But even as these innovations brought comfort, they also sparked debates about privacy and autonomy, questions that hovered in the air like the mist that clung to the forest floor. As the seasons turned, the trail became a living memorial, carrying with it the weight of history and the promise of the future. Rachel's story, etched into the landscape and woven into the collective consciousness, serve as a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of community. Her legacy was one of transformation, a metamorphosis from tragedy to triumph, from fear to fortitude. And so, as the moon rose high and bathed the trail in its silvery light, the forest seemed to hold its breath, listening for the footsteps of those who would walk in remembrance. In that sacred silence, one could almost hear Rachel's voice, a whisper carried on the wind, urging the world to remain vigilant, to embrace change, and to never forget the power of one life to inspire many. The night was heavy with an oppressive, suffocating darkness, the kind that seems to swallow the world whole, leaving nothing but an uneasy anticipation in its wake. In stark contrast, the dawn that followed brought with it a clarity that was as chilling as it was illuminating. The stark, bleak reality of Rachel Morin's fate shattered the fragile peace of Belair, casting long, ominous shadows over the town's sense of safety and normalcy. The forest, once a place of solace and introspection, became a haunting tableau of human depravity, the trees silent witnesses to an unspeakable act of violence that reverberated far beyond their ancient trunks. Rachel Morin's murder was not merely a crime. It was a catastrophic failure of every protective measure society claims to uphold. It was a grim testament to the inadequacies of a system that allowed a predator to roam freely, unchecked and unchallenged until it was too late. The community's shock and grief were palpable, a collective wound that bled into every corner of their lives. The idyllic trails that Rachel loved so much, once paths to personal freedom and health, transformed overnight into sinister reminders of vulnerability and fear. Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez, the man whose brutality ended Rachel's life, became an emblem not only of the monstrous capabilities within human nature, but also of the systemic flaws that allowed his violent streak to go unchecked. The trail of destruction he left was not confined to a single town or state. It stretched across borders and spanned continents, a chilling reminder of how interconnected yet dangerously unguarded our world truly is. His actions, egregious and unapologetic, forced a spotlight onto the dark underbelly of immigration policies and enforcement practices that failed to intercept a known threat. What was most infuriating about the case was not just the violence itself, but the timeline of missed opportunities and ignored red flags that could have potentially saved Rachel's life. Hernandez, with a criminal history that began long before he crossed into the United States, somehow slipped through the cracks of a system designed to prevent such tragedies. The discovery of his past crimes, including a brutal attack in Los Angeles, only compounded the outrage and disbelief. How could someone with such a history move freely, unimpeded by any real consequence, until he escalated to murder? The investigation, protracted and strenuous, revealed the inadequacies of current surveillance and tracking methods, sparking a contentious debate about privacy versus safety. Artificial intelligence, once a concept tethered to futuristic imaginings, became a practical, albeit controversial, solution. The installation of high-quality cameras along the Martin Park Trail was a direct response to Rachel's murder, a technological band-aid on a festering societal wound. While theoretically, these systems could deter and even preempt future attacks, they also raised significant concerns about the loss of personal privacy, a sacrifice that many debated was too great a cost for perceived security. The moral implications of using AI in surveillance, while significant, paled in comparison to the broader ethical questions raised by the case. Rachel's story, her life, and her untimely death became a catalyst for painful reflection on the part of her community and, indeed, the nation. It prompted an examination of the values we hold dear and the actions we take, or fail to take, to protect them. How many more lives would be lost before meaningful change was enacted? How long would bureaucratic inertia and political squabbling overshadow the imperative to act decisively in the face of burgeoning threats? In the end, Rachel Morin's murder was more than a tragic loss. It was a clarion call for justice and reform. Her story, forever etched into the annals of true crime, serves as a stark reminder that vigilance is not just a communal responsibility, but a deeply personal one. The path before us is fraught with challenges, balancing safety with liberty, prevention with rights, but it is a path that we must tread with unwavering resolve. Rachel's legacy, though born of tragedy, is one of courage and transformation, a testament to the enduring power of one life to inspire change in the face of overwhelming darkness. As her community mourns and heals, they must also look forward, determined to prevent such a horrific violation of trust and security from ever happening again. In the dim glow of dawn, as the first rays of sun filtered through the trees, the quiet of Belair had returned, but with a new, somber resonance. The whisper of the wind through the leaves seemed to carry the echoes of a community's collective grief and the determined resolve to protect its own. The specter of Rachel Morin's tragic end loomed large, a shadow that would forever alter the landscape of this small town. Her memory, vibrant and full of life, was now a beacon urging transformation. With each step taken on those trails, a silent vow was made. Never again would the unchecked passage of a predator go unnoticed. The entwined threads of justice and change stretched taut under the pressure of loss, yet they forged a stronger bond within the community. Through the fog of sorrow, a path of vigilance emerged, illuminated by the enduring spirit of a beloved woman who, in death, became the catalyst for an unwavering commitment to safety and reform. As the town healed, it held Rachel's legacy close, a poignant reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light of one life can inspire profound change.